All right, well, I think everybody on this panel has been in this industry for over 2 decades at a minimum, so I don't think we really need to do introductions. But Jack, there is an elephant in the room. And that is, last year, you were on this stage with one of your investors, and he said that FlyHouse was the Uber of private jets. And there was a fair bit of eye rolling in the audience. Fast forward a year, and I've seen the FlyHouse brand on a racing yacht, on a polo team. You've forged a pretty amazing NFL sponsorship, and you've got endorsements from a lot of professional athletes. So that's a pretty significant sort of consumer-focused push. You have a mobile app that doesn't require a membership. So the question remains, is FlyHouse the closest thing to Uber for private jets?
The definition of insanity is what? Aviation? No, listen, we didn't set out to be the next Uber for private jets. We set out to solve a problem that's in the industry. It's very fragmented, very opaque, filled with a bunch of friction. And so our app connects owners, operators, and the end user together and do it in 30 seconds.
Okay. So if FlyHouse is not the Uber of private jets, like what is the definition of Uber for private jets? Is it metaphorical, or is it, I got to book this thing in 10 seconds on my phone?
I mean, look, in its most literal sense, right, that can't happen, right? Because an Uber driver doesn't have to be licensed past the state as a private vehicle, right? And obviously, no one's going to go fly a jet around without 135 or other licensure and certification. So what I think we're really talking about is how does tech and how is AI, which we're all reading about in every other publication on the planet, how is technology going to change the charter brokerage and charter space in private aviation over the next few years? And I'll be the first one to launch the grenade if you want, Greg. I think
sure, I'll tee it up for you, all right? So Satya Nadella, right, the CEO of Microsoft, has said that traditional apps and customer interactions are going to be replaced by AI agents. All right, I just heard about a towing company that replaced their dispatchers with an AI agent that talks to the customers and assigns the closest tow truck 24/7, 365 for pennies on the dollar. So how do you see agentic AI impacting sales and customer service in charter?
Well, I don't think it's only agentic AI. I think agentic AI is one of those things. I mean, ultimately, and I know the room is not rife with charter brokers necessarily, but the charter brokerage business and the revenue that drives it impacts aircraft resale values, fractional providers, whole aircraft ownership decisions. So it's part of the underlying economics of the industry. And ultimately, I think that half the people in the charter brokerage business are doing other things in not 5 years, in 3 years, maybe 2 years. Anthony and Jack probably have a great view on that too.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
So the question around, is Uber here? I think it's not a linear question, because if you're talking about speed of, to Greg's point, an aircraft doesn't need to be, sitting on the runway for somebody who just went on an app. The way that we think about Uber, because I think for us it is something that we want to become, but it's not around the speed of getting an aircraft dispatched. It's around the consumer's experience. Consumers want access, and Leona was just touching on it earlier. We're dealing with a younger consumer. They're used to having access very quickly. They're used to the customer experience, right? There's a difference between customer service and customer experience, and I think that experience starts with, how we're using applications, how they're able to access pricing on demand, and itineraries make changes at passengers complete payment. We're, as an industry, I think we're still a bit antiquated in that client experience. So, how we're taking a viewpoint on it is how do we take that client experience to request a quote, to book an aircraft, have your itinerary, and move on, to Jack's point, in seconds and minutes. So that's, I think the Uberization of private aviation is certainly here. You can't have that conversation without talking about the capabilities of AI throughout so many facets of the business, data analytics, how it's optimizing client services on the other side through that data. So I believe we're here, and I think that it's something that we should all be focused on. And as leaders of our companies, I think it's our fiduciary responsibility to embrace it, educate it, train it, and make sure it's adopted, because the bus is here, and if we're not adopting it, those that aren't are just going to get run over by the bus.
But Greg, I know you've got more, but just I feel like there is a moment that's happening right now across all of aviation, commercial and private, and our company straddles both, where I think we'll see a double-digit reduction in the unit cost of flying a mile, flying passenger, however you want to think about it, a double-digit reduction in cost through investments in AI inside of those next 36 months. Scheduling, fueling, all the things that are manual now, right, that your company works on, right? Scheduling, fueling, customer service, dispatch, all those things.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's 4 points. It's awareness, access, speed, and control. Those are the 4 things we're solving for at all points. So when you talk about service, if you go to Chick-fil-A, there's 10 people tell you what a great day it is, hope to see you tomorrow. We're closed Sunday, by the way. You do a $40,000 trip, hey, here's your invoice, Greg. Like, where's the service part? The whole entire ecosystem's messed up.
Sure. So we will be able to add more consistency, right? For those companies that have the ability to invest, you're going to be able to have agents support your people and instill a new level of sort of consistency and service, right? Stuff that was harder to do and much more expensive yesterday is going to be much less expensive and easier to sort of stratify tomorrow, right? I mean, Jack, how are you planning to deploy AI at FlyHouse?
Well, listen, AI is not going to take you out to dinner and have a drink with you. And listen, there's a relationship. This whole ecosystem of aviation is built on relationships. So you're not going to be able to take that out. But AI is going to enhance it, and it's going to enhance all the data points and all the steps along the process. And to your point, talking about service along the way. It's not just what happens on the airplane. It's before you get on and when you get off, and solving those data points. For example, Signature is going to iPads for the guy that's fueling the airplane. So now everybody in the ecosystem knows that guy is getting his airplane fueled. So call Susie behind the desk. Nope, airplane's not here, it's not fueling. That's creating all this calls. And that creates chaos. So we're trying to eliminate a lot of the chaos.
And just to touch on agents, because I think when, a lot of the conversation around AI is directed towards obviously like consumer facing, how do we service our clients better, communicate, but the internal access, like the first agents that we've built were actually for our colleagues.
Yep.
Management, reducing questions, reducing contract terms, questions where it's like, hey, got a minute? What do I do when it's this? And now they're using agents to answer those questions as it relates to contracts, training libraries. We've taken all that digitally through AI and created video content around training, so we get onboarding faster. And when you think about, an operator, crew, I mean, the capabilities to enhance all those and really reduce all those mundane tasks, right? To enhance your employees to be working on things that are more lucrative, more client service facing to your business. It's amazing.
Got it. So since you've been leaning in on this, I mean, you've hired a rock star CTO, Terry Truda, right? And you acquired the Stellar platform, which had a mission to kind of dynamically price the industry. Like, can you speak a little bit to sort of how those investments are paying off for you? And maybe more than that, how do you think that positions you versus brokers that may not be able to make those kind of investments over the next year or two?
Yeah, so the Stellar acquisition in 2023 was kind of our foundation and our first step to really embracing AI. And then, so that's the foundation, and what we've been doing is building upon that. So Terry also has a team, an AI team that he supports, that the only thing they work on is AI and it's really around efficiencies, identifying bottlenecks, what are different departments working on that, they should be working on other things.
So, but you're in a unique position with your scale to invest in that, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller brokers that can't make those investments. Like, what is that going to do? Like, what are you going to be able to do that they can't do, and how is it going to impact the industry?
I mean, I think it has a tremendous impact. The charter brokerage market is insanely fragmented, and there's so many of these companies that they don't have the resources or the capital to invest in these initiatives. So I think that when you look at the market, there is the consumer market. There's a level of consumers that are going to want, that don't need hand-holding, the customers that fly 1 to 6 times a year. And I think that market is going to be much more difficult. And that's typically the smaller brokers. That's the market that they focus on. So I think that becomes...
So you're kind of echoing what Greg was saying here, that there may be just a significant reduction in smaller brokers that don't have the same benefits that AI can bring to a larger organization such as yours?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. It has to, right? Because if they can't keep up with what's going on in technology, and to Greg's point, I think the next 3 years become extremely interesting because we haven't even scratched the surface on the capabilities of AI and what it can do. And when I look at the training courses that we did in AI 12 months ago, the capabilities today are already light years ahead. So it's moving fast, and I think that they're going to have to kind of pivot their business model, whether it's jumping onto another platform company. There's companies out there, your Goodwins, your Hamiltons, that are building technology to support that. And so, yeah, I think they need to move extremely quickly because, candidly, we are.
Got it. How are you guys planning to address the fact that consumers are going to be using agents to shop for charter? Do you see that happening already? And how long before you think it's pretty commonplace for a charter shopper to dispatch an agent to go shop the market for you?
Well, I think Jack and I the three of us are probably aligned on this. I know Jack and I had the conversation earlier. And all it's going to do is bifurcate the market more clearly between people that treat flying privately as a commoditized, as a commodity, right? How many people, how far for how much, versus people that are looking for service delivery that just happens to also be transportation. And I think that the companies that focus on embracing one of those two models, both of them very consciously and very deliberately, will be successful. And the companies that are just muddling through, which to Anthony's point are sort of these 5 to 15 person shops that fancy themselves charter brokers, without a clear identity, they'll end up losing their customers either to lower priced commoditized brokers or check card programs or fractional programs, or to high service delivery solutions.
Got it. So Jack, you acquired Sun Air Jets recently, right? I think that brings your fleet to 23 aircraft. What's your strategy on the supply side, keeping in mind that you have a lot more control over the technology on the operator side if it's in-house versus through a partner network? Is the strategy to grow the managed fleet, or is it to grow the partner network?
Well, listen, I think it's both. But our model is, how do we drive costs down for our owners and our partners? And you can do that with scale. We talked earlier. Yep. 94% of the operators in the country have less than 15 airplanes. They can't scale. They can't get to 30, 40, 50. FlyHouse now comes in and can help do that. But to your point, I think we've solved the supply side, and I think there's a lot of asses to fill in the seats. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what seat you put them in. At the end of the day, you want to get paid. And to your point, next point is going to be about the payment side. Operators want to make sure they get paid.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's really important. But does it set you up to be competing with your partner network when you're...
No, because remember, we're frictionless. So the customer is determining the airplane. Operators determining the price. All we are is creating a marketplace.
So you're not giving yourself an advantage versus any of your partners in the network? Got it. So you said this earlier. Well, actually, let's jump to one of the questions out here. On the other side of the charter brokerage coin, it's so easy and cheap to build AI apps and agents. Is it easier to catch up to bigger charter brokers now? Right? So do we think some of the smaller brokers can just go out to, ChatGPT?
Sounds like a Goodwin question, right?
My 2026, 2027 budget would disagree with that statement. I don't think it's cheap. I think it's easier. But I mean, I think, again, when you look at the scope and the landscape of what's possible in AI, and an app is cheap and easy, but the capability is so much more advanced than an app, right? An app is a website on our phone. But when you think of the data analytics, we're working on a automated aircraft optimizer. There's all these other components to it that, from our tech roadmap, it's
But the other part of that, though, is, Anthony, how old is Magellan now? 15 years, 20 some?
18 years. Yeah.
18 years. I've been doing this 35 years, right? The certificate that we operate is 30 years old. If the consumer isn't willing to pay a penny more for the expertise housed in the centuries of combined experience from that staff, okay, then I guess it's time for me to finally retire. But I firmly believe, Greg, that the AI on its own doesn't make the difference between one guy with a Gmail address and a mobile phone versus what Anthony's built in 18 years.
And,
Sure.
and to that point, the other thing is you have to execute too, right? So that's where the rubber meets the road. And, in aviation, we're dealing in two imperfect things, and that's people and airplanes. And things will go wrong, mechanicals happen, shit happens, right, in our industry. And how we execute, so you can take that booking on, you can take that roadshow on, but it's a lot easier to get a customer than it is to keep a customer. And, I think that's where it becomes difficult for some of the smaller ones where it's just about getting a customer.
Right. So winning the customer the first time is a whole different ballgame than keeping a customer over the long term, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So maybe AI plays more of a role in qualifying those first customers and getting them in for that very initial transaction. But to Jack's point, that AI is not going to take them out to dinner and build a relationship, right? Right. Yeah. Somebody else like that. So there was a question here about whether it's worth the effort to build software anymore when AI agents are going to take over the whole deal. I mean, should anybody be investing in software, or should you leapfrog that and just be working on sort of agentic answers to the problems?
I still think you got to have tech. I mean, so you have to invest in the operations software stuff, because AI is coming. It's just not fully here yet. And I think as that time evolves, then we're going to figure it out. But for now, I think you have to invest in the technology.
Sure, and I mean, I would double down on that and say AI needs the right data. So both to the question that we were talking about earlier about can a small broker just hook up to, some off-the-shelf, ChatGPT or one of these other AI-type platforms and build their own agents that sort of change the world. But if they don't have access to the right databases on the aircraft fleet, the airports, the FBOs, the service providers, and all that, well, I don't know that a general AI tool is going to have all that access to all of that data. So there's that as a challenge, and then so there's that component, and then I think we have a bit of time before agents are really capable of kind of just dealing with the data, right? You're going to have user interfaces for a few more years at least.
That's a great question right here.
Sure. So let's throw it up. The hallmarks of a successful marketplace like Uber are velocity and speed, stickiness, and trust and safety. Which one is more difficult for private aviation?
I'm happy to wade in.
Huh?
I'm happy to wade in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all could comment on this. So who's a believer that the most difficult one is velocity? I think that's a challenge today, right? Because today, most charter operators, almost all charter operators are quoting manually, and it's hard to keep up with, the pace of the inbound requests, right? So that's a challenge today. If you look at the time it can take a charter broker to get good quotes, I mean, if it's after 5 o'clock at night, right? Sally at
No, it's Susie. You've met Susie? Yeah. Yeah, so Susie, if you guys don't know Susie, she's under 30, got 3 kids, and leaves the office at 2. It's very difficult to do multitasking jobs. She's an accountant, she does the charter, and she does the operations. So it's very difficult. So to this point, speed does become a problem from an operator standpoint to get it out. And obviously you got the stickiness and trust and safety. I got to go with number 3 being the toughest, because I think FlyHouse solves the velocity and speed part, but the trust and safety. And I think this is where the industry is kind of lacking. We've got to bring the industry together and operate under the same umbrella. We're all operating in these different umbrellas. And so I think that's the key. It's trust, obviously relationships, and then obviously the safety piece.
So are you saying we need to sort of come together like maybe the airline industry did and have common rails?
Well, I mean, listen, I think from a training standpoint, we talk about cost and how do you drive cost down for an owner. Well, to switch certificates costs money. So the same guy's flying the same airplane on the other certificate, but he can't fly on my certificate. That's crazy. So he's got to go to training. He just went to training, so now he's got to go back again. So I think if we can, that's the next step. I think if we can solve that part, that creates, a very different safety culture that I believe is lacking in the industry, because there's no standardization.
No, I was going to say, I would agree with 3. I think technology and AI are solving number 1 as it relates to velocity and speed. And I think a lot of folks, and I'd say that, some of the major, if you think about the Wheels Ups, the XOs, the FlyHouses, the Magellan, that's kind of either there or very close to being there. And then I would relate number 2 to the same technology and AI tech stacks. But number 3, trust, right? Trust is that's the one emotion up there, and trust and safety, right? And I think solving the emotional part of that, the other ones can be solved through tech and AI, and I think that's the direction that a lot of us in the aviation industry are going. So that, for me, that would be the one that tech can't solve, is that trust.
I mean, listen, Anthony's my guy. You can't talk to Anthony, right? He's my guy. He's the guy. He has to fly in the back of my airplane. Well, does he really? I don't think so. I think it doesn't matter what seat you put him in. But I think that's where the whole umbrella thing comes in. We all have to operate under the same system, instead of these hodgepodge things around the country where it's my guy. And stop saying it's our guy. And it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
But the same way that Uber ended up, show of hands, how many people here have Uber on their phone? Okay. How many people here have Lyft and only Lyft on their phone? Very few. Everyone who's got Uber and Lyft on their phone got to a day, they were leaving a concert, they were leaving an airport, and the Uber just kept canceling, right? And you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. And finally you said, okay, forget it. I'm going to go download this Lyft thing that I know about and see if that comes. And for those of you that stuck with Lyft, it's because Lyft showed up on a day, at a moment in time, when Uber couldn't deliver you a car reliably in that moment, leaving the airport, leaving the concert, leaving the rain, whatever it was. And now you've got both, and there's people that stick with Lyft, and there's people that say, you know what, I've got both. Let me check prices on both, and I'll book the one that's cheaper. So my point related to this question is that there's more than enough room in our market for more than one platform. There will be an Uber of private jets. There will be a Lyft of private jets. There will also be 3 other competitors or 10 other competitors, and that's fine. And consumers will make their own decisions for themselves. Do I care about price? Am I going to shop multiple? Imagine if you could get on 5 apps, never talk to a broker, do it in your proverbial underwear, standing in your kitchen, get 5 instant quotes, have no used car salesman call you about the quote. I got 3 emails this morning from charter brokers from companies where I've downloaded their app and requested a quote, and 3 of them called me this morning. One guy offered me 10 hours, sorry, I'm going off on a rant. One guy offered me, if I bought 20 hours of light jet time, I would get 10 free hours of super mid-time with a 1-hour minimum. In case there's anyone in this room that doesn't know, that's insane, right? That should not ever happen. My point is that it's fine that we're in a marketplace that's going to embrace multiple platforms. And I think the consumer will benefit and the operators will benefit because we won't have to invest, whether you're a broker, whether you are a fractional provider, whether you are a management company or charter operator directly, you won't have to invest all those millions of dollars a year at scale of having these customer service quoting people, following up with people. They'll select for themselves which one they want based on whatever their criteria is, be it trust, be it safety, be it reliability, or something else.
Got it. So if we look at Uber compared to ground transportation prior to, right, there are several things that Uber does. It finds a car easily. It also has the payment layer baked in, right? When a taxi you were paying, I mean, initially it was cash, right? Then it became a credit card. One of the things that makes Uber easier is that the payment is just sort of a card on file and you don't have to worry about it. How important do you think streamlining payments is in the evolution of charter?
I think it's a massive part of it. I mean, you can't do anything if you don't get paid. What's the saying? No dough, no go. So I think the payment thing, and especially for the 94% of the operators, right? Money is a big deal. Making payroll is a big deal, and doing it every other week. So I think the streamlining that process on the payment side becomes that much more critical. Probably number one on something like this, right?
Part of that, velocity and speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go to the other side of that coin, being on the consumer side. I think that for the consumer to have access to, again, a client experience that removes friction points and they're able to access, completion of that transaction quickly, easier. And, it's no different than when you look at Amazon's success and, Amazon's pricing isn't amazing. You can find stuff cheaper and do all that, shopping and all that, but they solved one issue in their business and in that sector, which was shipping. They removed the obstacle of shipping and made the transaction easy. And now we all don't shop around for trash bags anymore. We're willing to pay $1, $2 more because the client experience is so good. And so same thing in our, in our industry. I think that if we can simplify that client experience, saving $1,000 when you have to go do a DocuSign, give your credit card, unsecured picture of your credit card that you're sending to somebody who you don't know. I think when you remove those obstacles at the level of clients that we're all working with, $1,000 here, $1,500 here, I think is worth the peace of mind and the simplicity of that experience.
You know Tuvoli?
I do.
Any comment from you on that, Greg?
No, I like what they said.
Got it. So where do we go from here? What advice would you give to anybody that we have in the audience about how to tackle the challenges that AI are going to bring to all of us in the next couple of years?
I mean, I'd say the first word that comes to mind is adoption and education. When we first started talking about AI in our business, and one of the elephants in the room when you have these conversations around AI is job displacement, right? And it's a very real topic. Amazon, it's in the news. They just let go of 45,000 employees that are being replaced in AI. But I think when, at least when at whether it's an industrial revolution or a technology revolution, there's certainly an adjustment period where there will be jobs displaced. But then when you look at, the long term, there's job creations that we didn't even know existed. And Sam Altman the other day gave a great example of it. If you look back 100 years ago, the lamplighter, the guy that used to walk down the street and physically light every single lamp on the street, and then the next morning go and shut them off. And, the lamplighter could not imagine that job being automated today. And the there was a displaced amount of jobs, right? Lamplighters and when you look at where we're at today, electricity and these technologies have created millions and millions and millions of jobs that we couldn't even get our heads around 100 years ago. And I think that's where it's just the uneducation, and I think just the fact that we don't know what we don't know. So there will be a displacement, but there's certainly going to be other roles and other jobs that we just don't even know.
But if you're the leader of a company trying to navigate the AI landscape and the changes that are coming, it can be daunting to try and understand where to act. All of you here have given deep thought to that and have your own strategies. We've talked about it. Like, if you were advising some of these folks about what they should do if they're still trying to figure out how to employ and deploy AI, where would you encourage them to start?
Well, I think it's different for each business owner, right? I mean, it's all a function of solving for inefficiency and allowing machines to do what expensives can do, perhaps slower, less accurately, and at a greater cost. I mean, that's ultimately what AI does, right? Is it transforms jobs in the workforce to solve new problems. For our business, it's actually quite different. I built a company over 30 years that is incredibly high touch, right? We generate margins that are probably twice what anyone else in the charter brokerage industry has generated at scale, at length, over decades. And for us, though, that means it's too expensive to go quote a light jet trip from New York to Boston. We can't do that well, and we can't do it quickly. And so for us, the problem was, how do we compete on lower margin, smaller trips on smaller aircraft in a cost-effective manner? And for us, that means deploying and investing heavily in AI to price those flights out and do it under an entirely different brand that will launch here in the next quarter.
Okay. Anybody else have a thought or a recommendation for somebody that's trying to figure out how to start employing AI in their business?
Fast recommendation for any readers out there, I would definitely grab the book, The AI-Driven Leader, which is just kind of gets our heads around AI adoption, and just kind of the starting point of integration, because integration to our employees was one of the most difficult aspects of our journey.
So we got another question here. Accurate pricing for global trips, particularly global, right? We start going outside of that north-south to Florida deal, right? It requires an awful lot of data to get the price right. That doesn't necessarily exist today, right? What's it going to cost for overflight? What are my landing fees? What are the operating hours of that airport that you're flying into? Are there permits and visas and other things required? Is pretty complex problem. How do we scale a partner network using an AI app?
Well, I mean, it's definitely tough. I think when you talk about partners, you got to get everybody together. I mean, that's the first step, right? I mean, the first step is put everybody in the room and say, hey, how can we help each other, as opposed to doing this, hodgepodge thing. Listen, it's very difficult. I think, just solving what we've solved in the U.S. And then going outside of that, there's so many different data points, but that's where AI can come in and help pick apart that and make it a seamless experience. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to solve for, is make the experience seamless.
And I fundamentally disagree with the question. I think that any trip that can be priced by a bunch of humans can be priced by a machine. I mean, you can give it the access to the data of what the airport operating hours are, and you can give it years of historical data, if you have that historical data, over what those overflights cost and permits cost, or average per trip. And a lot of operators do that internally. If I ask Jack what a permits cost to run a trip from the East Coast to Italy, he's going to come back and he's going to say $7,200-ish, and know that that's the answer on a large cabin jet. And if humans can do it, machines can do it.
I agree with you on that. I think that while that sounds like a daunting problem today, it's going to be a trivial problem tomorrow, right? That data is going to be available, right? And we have the history, right?
There was one of there that just said, why are we being defensive about AI? Where's that at? Where's that one at?
Defensive?
We actually all work for Sam Altman up here, is the truth, so.
Why are we defensive about AI? It's not a threat, but how do you
Right.
see it more as an opportunity? I mean, listen, I think scale is here. Scale is going to happen. I think AI can help enhance that, and it can help enhance the service aspect. So I don't, definitely not defensive. I think there's an opportunity for sure, 100%.
Well, I think as leaders of companies, I think as humans, I think right now, to a certain extent, I think everyone is defensive around AI because it's the unknown, right? And it's happening so fast.
Is the right word defensive or apprehensive, right? I mean, it's
Well, it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if you ask the 45,000 employees that just lost their jobs at Amazon, it's probably defensive. But again, I think that it's really the unknown, the not being educated on the capabilities. And, as I look at the employee landscape, I think that, it's not AI that's going to displace everybody. It's people that know how to use AI are going to displace those that don't.
Sure, we hear that more and more. That's a talk track that a lot of people are saying. I think one thing we could look at, on the positive side of AI, I was talking with someone earlier today, and they were saying, well, give me a real world example of what AI could do for me as an operator tomorrow. And I said, well, it's a pretty good best practice to be checking the weather, for the itinerary on a trip 3 or 4 days out and looking for issues, right? And then communicating that to the customer and coming up with a plan B and all of that, right? I mean, AI today could automatically start checking that weather 3 or 4 days out. Pretty soon, it could be recommending what that plan B could be. And then it's not too far in the future where it could probably communicate what that plan B is to your customer and go back and forth. Now, are you still going to have people on top of that looking at it? Yes, but that would be one facet of better service that you could say, now nobody has to remember to check the weather. What happens if they don't? What if they don't? The weather changes after they've checked it. The AI could help that one facet very easily today. You guys have any other sort of instances of something like that?
Well, I mean, listen, I would say this. I think the industry has operated under a certain framework for so long, and I think now it's not going to operate that way going forward. So I think behavior change is a real deal. We have to change the way we've operated for years, and AI is going to help do that.
Sure.
There was anyone remember the name Chuck Gavalt, Gavalt? It's the only Harvard-educated person I ever met in the charter broker space. And when I got started in 1989, he published a book called The Air Charter Guide. And between him and one firm here in the US in Boston and another one in the UK, they had 100% market share. Chuck's Air Charter Guide was the Yellow Pages. And the crazy thing is that there's probably some people in the room that don't know what the Yellow Pages was either. And my kids love to tell me how old I am. My point is that we've already seen, since deregulation, we've already seen our industry transform episodically, right, a couple of times. This is just the next set of changes. And we will either invest, adapt, and grow and succeed, or we won't. It's that simple.
I think that's a fair point. If you rewind to pre-internet, the charter broker was a rare commodity, right? There were a handful of guys that did it, but by and large, people called the operator at their local airport, right? They did use the Yellow Pages. The internet tipped that all on its head. So it will be very interesting to see as AI comes into play. Does it tip the scales back in favor of the operator, or does it make brokers even stronger?
The wise man said, we'll see, right?
Yep. All right, well, with that,
We good?
thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.